Good day, everybody. Welcome to Canadian Music in the 80s and 90s, the YouTube channel and the Facebook group. Um, it's my second time around interviewing this fine musician here, Blair Packham, formerly of the Jitters, and great solo artist in his own right. I guess I'm going to start reminding people, if you like what you're seeing here, please subscribe and say you like it. That means you too, Blair.
Will do. Haven't I done that? I'm sure I did that.
I'm sure you did. I'm
Yeah,
just I'm just making fun of you.
yeah.
So you're not at home at the moment, are you?
No, I'm in St. John's, Newfoundland, which is I've been here. I've been here 6 or 7 times, I guess,
Hmm.
but usually for one nighters.
Right.
When I was with the Jitters, we would come in, we'd fly in, play Memorial University, and then the next day fly out to Halifax. Or drive in and play somewhere else in Newfoundland, maybe Corner Brook or somewhere, but then we'd move on. You know, and so really didn't have much time to spend here. The last time I was here, it was overnight. I was on an adventure. I was working on an adventure cruise that was leaving from St. John's and heading to Greenland. And so I was here the day before, and then got on the ship and left the next day. So this is great. I'm here for 2 weeks, and I intend to soak it up.
And you have you're doing some performing from what I understand.
Yeah, well, I thought if I'm here for 2 weeks, I was going to spend the time writing and being a tourist, basically, and walking around and checking things out. But this is such a music town,
Yeah.
and people here there are so many talented songwriters and performers here, and I kind of thought, well, I kind of want to play too, you know.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so I asked some friends if they had any thoughts, and my friend Andrea Monroe, who lives here and plays here, terrific songwriter. She suggested that I get in touch with the Black Sheep,
Okay.
with Donnie at the Black Sheep in St. John's, and they're right on George Street, where it all happens.
Hmm.
And I went there last night. I'd never been there before, and it's a great club. It's like a classic sort of low ceilinged pub with great sound. And the band playing last night, man, they were amazing.
What kind of stuff were you playing with them? Did you do covers? Did you do a lot of your own stuff or?
Well, no, I didn't. I didn't play with them last night. I just went out and checked it out. I
Oh,
had
okay.
a couple
Yeah.
of beers and watched them, and they were doing their own stuff. See, this is what I love is a place where you can do your own stuff and you'll get a crowd if you're good and
Yeah.
people will pay attention. And the guy playing, Mick Davis,
Hmm.
he's fantastic. Like, what a great writer and what a great singer. And I hear a lot of Badfinger in what he does, like sort of
Hmm.
60s pop, but not but also 70s and 80s. Like I don't know, it's not nostalgic so much as it just evokes those eras,
Right.
and he like inventive ideas and catchy songs. Like, I only heard those songs once, and I can remember some of them. And yeah, it was, and they were a cool looking band in a cool looking space.
Right.
So yeah, so it was great to see him. He was in a band called the Novaks, and they had some real brushes with success. Um, and uh, and he's still plugging away, which is amazing. But I'm going to play there tonight, which is
Oh, cool.
Sunday night. Yeah, I'm going to be there at 10 o'clock. I'm following a band called the Crate Diggers, and they are a cover band, but they do cool cover. Like, they're not doing classic rock hits that you hear in a lot of places,
Right.
played by a lot of people. They're doing like B-sides and album cuts, and so I follow them, and we'll see how it goes.
So have you met Mick before or?
No, and I didn't even meet him last night. Actually, I meant to, but suddenly, it's funny. Suddenly, I wasn't feeling well last night, and I mean, maybe I'm a total lightweight now. I only had 2 beers, but uh, but at the end of drinking the second beer, I thought I want to go home, and I'd been there for a few hours at that point. I met the owner, Donnie, who's like seems like just a great guy, and I met like the locals here are so friendly. I started
Yeah.
talking to a guy named Bob who said, like, I was standing watching, and he said, "Hey, you can sit here. My friends didn't show up," and so I sat down with him, and then in between sets, we talked a little bit about stuff and about the scene. And he's not a musician, but he loves music, and he knew the owner a little bit. And then the owner came over and talked with me and so forth. So I never got a chance to meet Mick, which is a drag. But I don't know what I would have said, except I think your songs are great. He was terrific.
Did a lot of the people remember you?
Uh, there wasn't any, but there was one other person who came over and said hello. But I went to the bathroom at one point, and I could hear this song in the background and the singer, and I thought, oh, that's a good singer. I was thinking like this is a good night for music. Like I
Yeah.
get to hear this band, and then here I am in the bathroom, and I can hear this. I hear whatever that song is. I like that song, and then it turned out it was me. It was the Jitters. The bridge is burning, and just hearing it off in the distance, sort of filtering through the bathroom door. I thought, well, that guy's a good singer. So that was funny and interesting.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So you're there for a little bit more.
Yeah.
And I understand you got some trouble you're getting into when you get back to Ontario. There's a gig I see you put up the other day, and can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, well, I'm at my residency I was at a place on the Danforth where you and I met, a place called Sauce,
Mhm.
and I was there every Wednesday night for the last year and a half, and that's a real kick in the butt. Doing a residency, playing solo largely,
Mhm.
it's a real kick in the butt because you got to be good, and you got to, and it's a challenge in a different way than playing big stages, which I've done too, but
Yeah.
these days I'm playing more small stages for sure, and that place doesn't even have a stage. So it was really good for me, but we decided mutually, Sauce and I, that once a week, it was hard to sort of keep it going as an event
Right.
because people come see you. When are they gonna come see you again next week, or next month, or who knows? I had some devoted people who would be there every week, which is great, but it started to seem too much. So all this to say that I'm going to be there at Sauce maybe once a month from now on,
Okay.
and that means I got to look for other gigs. So I got a gig at a place even closer to my house.
Okay.
Apparently, what I really want is not to go on the road, but the opposite. I want to like maybe live over the venue and come down in my PJs and play or something. I don't know. This place is about 4 blocks from my house, and it's called
Right.
Noonan's, and it's a pub. It's featured all kinds of people over the years,
Mhm.
well-known people, and but it's an Irish pub, and it's a sort of authentic Irish pub kind of experience, and they have trad sessions a few times a week, but I won't be playing any Irish music. I will be playing my own stuff on the 15th of June, Thursday the 15th of June, and that should be fun.
Even though you'll have a fiddle player with you.
Yeah, well, it's funny, she bristles at the idea of being called a fiddle player. Natalie Wong plays violin and she sings, and she'll say, "Yeah, I don't play fiddle," because she
Mhm.
doesn't do the sort of rootsy
Right.
country-ish kind of things that you'd expect from a fiddle player. She can, but she tends to come at it from a classical background,
Right.
which really works with my songs.
It does, because I remember seeing her with you at
Yeah,
Sauce when I was back in Ontario, and she just adds so much color to your music. And yeah, she seems like more of a classically trained violin player. Like, I mean, of here in the East Coast, it's obviously a fiddle
yeah,
and
yes.
it's a different style, but she really adds a flavor to your music that's not necessarily fiddle, but it's just a nice color.
Yeah, thanks. I think I know she'd appreciate those kind words. She's really very, very talented, and she and she plays. We've never really rehearsed. I mean, she just plays along, and she knows when to stop because
Hmm.
the silence is almost as important as the notes.
Yeah.
I tend to tell my younger students that because they want to play, they want to show off how fast they can play, they want to
Yeah.
show off how many notes they can fit into a short period of time, and that to me anyway. I mean, I know some people love that. Some people love music. I call it music as athleticism.
Yeah.
Where you're trying to sort of show off what an athlete you are as a musician.
Right.
That isn't my thing. So thankfully it isn't Natalie's thing as well. So when she plays, she chooses her spots carefully, and she's improvising, but boy, she has great ears.
With you, it's about the song. It's not about the great, flashing your musical talent, which she obviously has and you have. It's about the song.
Yeah,
And it's obvious she's a great musician because she just knows how to fit in, knows where to fit in, and doesn't
yeah,
need to rehearse with you to do that. She knows where to come in, where not to, and just, that's a sign of a good musician. She can fit in anywhere.
yeah. That's what I think too. And when she's not playing with me, she will be playing with an orchestra. She'll be playing with
Right.
Richard Clayderman, like big
Oh,
names
right.
in that world.
Yeah.
She's she gets good gigs, and she gets, let's put it this way, she gets good gigs, and she also plays with me. So,
Don't belittle yourself. You're a good
no,
gig.
no, no, but no, but that whole music as athleticism thing, I liken it. I like when I think of the Beatles, for instance. I think
Right.
those guys could play, you know, and they could play like crazy, but it was all in support of the song.
Right.
and and they weren't about, hey, look what I can do. Ringo played a drum solo once, a recorded drum solo once, and he said he never played them live, but he played, and it's a simple drum solo, but it serves the song.
Right.
And I don't know, the music as athleticism people, they tend to be the people who think Ringo is a bad drummer, and those people I have no time for.
Well, I just remember a comment John Lennon made about, is Ringo the best drummer in rock and roll? And he said he's not even the best drummer in the Beatles.
Now, here's the funny thing about that. I read a thing, and I don't know which is true, but I read this thing that said actually John Lennon didn't say that. That was a stand-up comic in the '80s who said
Oh,
that, who
okay.
attributed it to John Lennon, but in fact, Lennon himself never said that.
Okay.
And here's the thing: my feeling about that, and I know, even if Lennon said that, he would have been joking because Ringo
Yeah.
was, but you know. Having played in a whole bunch of bands,
Hmm.
Ringo was a hell of a drummer,
Yeah.
and he, like, we now listen to music that is usually, more often than not, recorded to a click track, to a metronome,
Right.
more often than not. And certainly the big hits of the day, they're either recorded to a click track or they're drum machines, so they're locked
Right.
in solid. The Beatles didn't do that. They never recorded to a
Yep.
click track. And yet, you'd be hard pressed to find an example of a Beatles song that slows down or speeds up. Ringo was like a
Right.
metronome. And not only that, he wrote these incredible parts that are iconic, and he wrote them. He came up with these parts. He could have played, this simple sort of standard thing. He
Yep.
did. He always looked for the more interesting part to play. So
Yeah.
that's writing. That's creativity. That's not just regurgitating riffs or licks or whatever.
Right.
And then the final point I would make is this, and I always say this. I don't know, I may have said this to you already, but here it is, Sunday. Uh, there are bands recording in studios around the world, and I'll bet you $1 million that there's a producer saying to one of those drummers right now, "Can you make it more like Ringo?" You know,
Yeah.
like like Ringo just defined this style. And again, people who say, yeah, technically it wasn't great, like, eh, eh, like what does that even mean technically? Like, anyway, yeah, yeah, as you can tell, I find the argument frustrating.
Well, I mean, the Beatles were craftsmen of songs. I mean, yeah, you're right. They could play and they could play well,
Yeah,
but they were crafting a song. They weren't just crafting it, look how great I am. You know what I mean? Like, I always felt that about an Eddie Van Halen. Not only could he shred in the guitar, but he made beautiful music. Like he made
no
beautiful
doubt. Yeah,
harmonies and melodies, and I like the fact when there's always the Dave and Sammy argument, but I kind of liked what he did with Sammy because he
yeah,
branched out a little bit and used some keyboards and piano and
yeah.
showed that it didn't matter, as
And
long as the
and
song was good.
exactly, the songs remained interesting and cool and fun, and
Right.
move. That's the purpose of music, is to move you. Now, if if you get moved by, the sound of somebody shredding, if that's what moves you, that's great. That's
Yeah.
fine. But it's not the only way, and it's not the only measure of a
Right.
musician. Facility, speed. Somebody can play slowly and and poorly, but if they make you feel something, then that's the purpose of music, you know.
Exactly.
It's why, raw country blues can be, played by somebody who's maybe beyond their best playing years,
Hmm.
can still be really moving because the emotion is in the tone, and it's in the placement of the note, and it's in the words that are being sung, and the sound of the voice, etc.
It's a feeling, and you can't teach that. It's
Yeah,
something you have to feel. As you know, like I play a little guitar myself. I'm not great, but it's all about the way it feels. You know what I mean? It's not about how great it's played. It's about the feeling that you get when you're in tune with other people too, like
yeah,
playing as a
yeah,
band. Like
yeah.
you can't teach that to someone. It's something you have to feel. You're like, okay, I see where you're going with this, and
Right, right.
that kind of stuff.
When I was young and much more ignorant, not that I'm so wise now, but when I was young and foolish, I thought Rush sucked. They weren't, because I was a Beatle. I came up with the Beatle, like they're almost anti-Beatles in certain ways, in certain aspects, right?
Right,
And I gotta say, over the years, over the decades, I came to appreciate so much their songs, like as songs.
right,
And then you realize, oh no, they're not, they're never, they in particular are never just playing something for the sake of playing it. It fits the music, it's
right,
orchestral. And I've gained a real appreciation for that kind of music, and also a real acceptance that yes, for some people, athleticism in music is what they feel, and it's what they want to feel. I get that. It's just not so much what I'm interested in.
but I'm glad you brought up Rush, because I was actually thinking about them too, about how technically in terms of musicianship you can't, they're just so amazing, the three of them together, but they crafted good songs
Yeah. They,
around the musicianship, you know what I mean? Like even when they got into like the late 80s, when they went kind of keyboard based, and some of my favorite Rush songs were on some of those early 90s records they did. I don't know if you ever heard a song they did called Bravado
oh
and
yeah,
Roll the
sure.
Bones. Like
Yeah.
that's not your typical classic rock Rush sound, but what a beautiful song. You
Yeah.
know, and just goes to show they don't have to show off how great they are musically. We know how great they are musically. It's just, but what a great song.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I would, in the sentence you just said, I would substitute the word technically. You know, how great they are technically. We know how great they are technically because
Yeah,
musically, music can be just one note,
yeah,
or three notes in a particular combination, particular rhythm. And music can be in the rhythm of a washing machine, a dryer that's a washing machine that's off center, or a dryer that I have this in my
yeah.
house. I have a dryer that the bearings are going, and honestly, I hear rhythm in that. I can hear it from the basement, and it's amazing, and it has inspired me to write some songs. So music is everywhere, and it doesn't have to be in a sort of look at me kind of way.
Right. And you don't have to pay copyright fees to your washing machine.
No, no. I would share the co-writing if I had to, but
I'm sure the manufacturer is going to get on you one day about that when
yeah,
you realize
probably.
you're stealing
Yeah,
song ideas from them.
yeah.
You want some of the publishing or something.
In the corporate world we live in, that no money shall be left on the table.
So you mentioned before we got on here that you have been trying to do some writing.
Yeah, I've been well, I okay, so I'm writing I don't know what you call it, I guess a memoir, except it seems absurd. I mean, I've had some interesting experiences in my life for sure, but I know lots of people have had way more interesting experiences. But I'm writing these things down because, first of all, I've enjoyed revisiting these things and remembering stuff that I had long forgotten. But also, I feel like the entertainment or the engagement comes from the storytelling.
Yes.
Like, so I could tell you about how last night I didn't go out for dinner. I barbecued some fish on the barbecue. And if I
Right.
tell the story interestingly enough, you'll be like chuckling and going, "Oh, that's good," and I like that or whatever.
Yeah.
Even though the actual content of the story is he cooked some fish on the barbecue, but
Yeah.
it's the telling of the story. And so that's what I'm hoping will come across in the writing that I'm doing, because I've got a lot of these experiences that I mean, in the worst case scenario, I hope my son reads it and understands me a bit better. You know, that's
Oh,
if
how old's your son now?
He's 21.
Okay.
So, and I don't think I think he understands me pretty well. But when I was 21, I wasn't that interested in my dad or how my dad had lived, and I regret that I didn't learn more about his life. So I'm giving my son, if nobody else, the opportunity to learn more about my life if he's interested, and if he's not, maybe somebody else will, and if not, I will have had a good experience writing it. So
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm curious. I was always curious about my mom and dad growing up because I think the thing that got me curious about it was the movie Back to the Future.
oh yeah,
Like
yeah,
going back to the 50s and seeing your parents at
yeah,
your age. Like
yeah,
I found that a really interesting concept to a movie. Like to go back and see what your parents were like because you're 17, you're going back and seeing your parents at 17.
yeah,
I think that's interesting. Like, and that's kind of why I like living here in PEI because my dad's from here, and it's interesting to see where he grew up and hearing the stories.
yeah.
Because there's lots of good maritime stories here. There's
Oh
books and
yeah,
magazines that print them all the time, and even my aunt wrote a book
yeah.
about growing up on the farm here in PEI. Some of the
Oh
interesting
wow,
characters, yeah, like so. And I got a cousin encouraging me to do the same thing about how my dad adopted my brother and I, and stuff like
right.
that. She thinks it'd be a great book. I don't think it would be, but she thinks it would be. But maybe
Well,
you're right. It's in the telling of the story.
yeah, I'm thinking that like on the surface, if you just look at the sort of sketchy details of my life, it
Right.
would. I'm sure anybody would go, yeah, I don't know if there's a book in there, and I still don't know if there is either. But I mean, it's in the writing of it. I'm spending like 2-3 hours a day on it the last few days,
Right.
and generally I spend an hour every couple of days on it. And so I'm writing and rewriting, and I'm thinking, you know what? Some of these stories, I'm thinking, yeah, that doesn't need to be in there, but I'm leaving it in for now anyway. But some of the stories I think are really compelling.
Well, I mean,
And
you're a great songwriter. You
thank you.
you really write colorfully, and you're like I remember you telling me last time your writing's getting better.
Oh yeah, oh
And
yeah.
I agree with that. When I saw you play at Sauce and listen to some of the songs you've written, I was just like, wow, he's really good with lyrics. Like
Oh, thanks.
your
Thank you.
writing of a book has got to be good. Like, I mean,
Well, yeah, I mean, I hope so. I guess we'll find out. I mean, you can also have something that's really well written, but that nobody wants to read. So,
yeah,
there's no telling really what will happen. But I feel like I'm, it's funny. I've been teetering on the edge of retirement now for years, in a way, in a sense. And what does retirement mean when you're a musician? When you're self-employed? Like,
right,
I'll still be teaching at Seneca College when I get back to Toronto.
right.
I still run my annual songwriting workshop, which is called Song Studio, by the way, songstudio.ca.
Yeah,
And it looks like we've got yet another great keynote speaker lined up. I can't announce it yet, but last year it was Rick Emmett, and the year before that it was Lyle
excellent,
Lovett, and the year before
excellent.
that it was Steve Earle. So we've had Bruce Coburn and Sylvia Tyson and many many great songwriters over the years. So I'll still be doing that. So I'm not retired from those things. So what does retirement mean? I guess it means that I'm actually focusing on art and on creating stuff, and which is so funny because the art and the creation of stuff is what paid my bills all these years. And yet I
Right.
always put it on the back burner because I felt like, well, yeah, but I got to make a living. Well, it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, but you make a living writing. So why don't you spend more time writing? And I would get all anxious, and I'd think like, well, maybe I should make some phone calls. I should book some shows. I should do this. I should do that. And what I'm finding now is as I get older, I'm allowing myself to spend more time writing. And
Well, I guess it's a question of what are you retiring from?
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
are you retiring from performing altogether? Are you retiring
never.
from recording? And I guess the other question I would say to you is, do you have to altogether?
Yeah,
No. You can
no,
still write when you can. You can still go do a show whenever you want, but you can do it on your terms. You don't have to do it like because you have to, because
yeah,
you're obviously not going to make a living going on tour.
no, and well, it's certainly not without really focusing on it, and I mean, I think I actually could because I live I always said I live low to the ground. I
Right.
live frugally, and so I could make some sort of a living going on tour, I think. But I it depends. I'd want to go somewhere interesting. I'd want to play in St. John's for sure. I'd love to play Charlottetown and Halifax, the maritime cities. You know, I'd love to do that. I haven't done that since playing with the Jitters, really. A couple of exceptions here and there. Love to do that again, but I don't want to do it because I have to. I want to do
Yeah,
it because I want
because
to.
you want to.
Yeah, yeah.
Is there a Jitters reunion in the works, maybe?
Well, you know, we've done them every year. We've played at least once a year for the last 10 years or 12 years. So, but except we didn't do it during COVID.
Yeah.
But we, you know, we did get together and we even had some new songs. We talked about making a record. Um, I don't know. You know, funny thing is, the Jitters focused on my songs, but we
Right.
did songs by Danny, the guitar player, Danny Levy, as
Yeah.
well. And and I love his songs, and but I'm not sure he loves mine.
Yeah.
So I sort of feel like, well, if I'm gonna spend time and energy making a record that probably isn't gonna sell, but we do it for our own satisfaction. Well, I want to do it. I want to work on my songs. You know, I want to work with people who like my songs. So
Yeah.
I still feel like it's one thing to go play the old songs, and it's another thing to do new stuff. So we may, yeah, yeah, but there's no plan right now.
So there's
But
no bitterness between you and the other guys, obviously. You're obviously
well,
still.
no, I mean the only bitterness I feel is when I think, hey, I presented a new song too. You didn't seem to like it, and then
Yeah.
I think, well, that's kind of weird. If you know, if the band you're in, if you're not the biggest fan of the let's say the bass player, I love Matt Greenberg's bass playing.
Yeah.
But if I was in a band with him at this point and I hated his bass playing, well, why? Why bother? Like we don't need to. We
Yeah.
don't have to be in a band together. So if somebody isn't digging my songs, then why would we play in a band together? You know, like you want to be in a band with people whose songs you really
Yeah.
like.
Oh, what
So,
about just doing some shows with the band, like maybe
yep,
coming out to
yep.
Halifax and doing a show, a Jitters reunion show, or like
Well,
maybe not doing a full-blown tour, but doing a few
yeah,
shows across the country or
we have to not lose money is the thing, and you know,
yeah,
so you're talking like either a van or which could be hellish at our age, a
yeah.
van or plane, and
Mhm.
you know, you got to justify it somehow. So if it was justified, if somebody was interested in doing it, we you know when we play our annual shows, our last show, I think I told you this, our last show, Geddy Lee came to it, and he was so complimentary.
Yeah.
He was and he said, "Oh my God, you guys rocked!" Like he said, I didn't know you were such a good band," and we were really good. And and then he said, and he pointed at me. He said, you're a funny fucker," which which I took as a huge compliment because he's pretty funny too.
One more Jitters question. Do you guys have
Sure.
anything in do you guys have anything in the vault?
Oh yeah, well there's a ton of demos that nobody's ever heard. Yeah, yeah, no masters like
Yeah,
because but yeah, in those days, uh, you know, you recorded demos in a demo studio, but then you did the
right.
real thing in a real studio. Well, unless somebody was paying for a real recording, you know, we didn't do that. So we have demos, but
Yeah. So there is some material that never saw the light of day or anything like that.
ton of material that never saw the light of day. Yeah, for the
Yeah.
second album, we probably wrote 60 songs,
Yeah.
and of those, you know, 15 got released. So yeah, there's a ton of material, and some of those songs are really good. A lot of songs with Jules Shear, who we wrote the second album with. We did a total of about 30 songs with Jules.
Okay.
So and 15 of those or 14, something like that, were released. So the remainder, some of them are great. Here's a funny thing. You know that Green Day song that I can't remember the title of, but goes da 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 da.
Oh, basket case, I think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm not kidding. Like when did Green Day release that? That would have been like,
That would have been their first major label release, I believe. It was Dookie, the big seller.
yeah. So
They got a
what year?
few singles out of that.
Yeah. What year would that have been? do you think?
Mid 90s.
Yeah. So like in the middle. So we wrote that melody. I'm not saying they stole it from us, not at all.
Yeah,
But Jules Shear, Danny Levy, and I wrote that melody in 1989. Like same melody, same chord changes, completely different words, and it goes a different place. But it's a great song. It's called the one that got away.
right.
And but if I play it now, people go, "Oh yeah, like the Green Day song," and
Yeah,
it's like no, it actually predated it by 5 or 6 years. But okay, but some chord changes suggest certain melodies, and I think in their case and in our case, that's just what happened. Um, but it's
yeah.
interesting. It means I can't really play that song, which is a good song. It's a really good song, but I can't play it because people will just think I ripped it off from Green Day.
It never got past the copyright stage or never got written, I
Well,
guess. But
we wanted to put it on the first record, but the record label at the time didn't. And again, the Green Day song didn't exist yet, so there's no reason to not put it on the record, except they didn't like it so as much as we did.
I'm
So
always amazed when I hear about some bands who heard some Canadian bands that I didn't think would ever heard outside of Canada. Like, did you ever hear Eddie Vedder's version of Hard Sun?
no, but Eddie Vedder, he's boy, does he ever do some great cover versions of various things?
Yeah, like how would you have heard that song? Hard Sun
Yeah,
was a song I only heard on Canadian radio. Who sang that song? I forgot the title. It was a
I've
solo artist,
forgotten, but yeah,
but it wound up on the soundtrack of this movie Eddie Vedder did.
yeah,
And he
it's
does a beautiful version of the song. Like it's pretty much the same song, but like how would he have ever heard that?
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
so I'm wondering, did Green Day ever hear you guys? You never know.
Yeah, no, because it would have been demos and stuff. No, no, I'm not in any way alleging that. Not
No.
at all. But no, and it was just demos. I mean, maybe. I'm not saying maybe they stole it. I'm saying it's in the big wide world, it's it's hard to say what you hear. I mean, for instance, I here's a funny story that I will put in my book. I don't know if I'll tell it very well yet because I haven't told it before, so I haven't practiced. I haven't, you gotta tell a story a few times to get the grease
Right.
going. But I was in one of the many million things I have done to make a living. Bob Dylan was making a movie in Toronto. It's called Hearts of
Okay.
Fire,
Okay.
and his female co-star, was Fiona from the
Oh,
'80s.
really? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a pretty terrible movie. But it's got some great music in it. And so I was uh, hired to coach the actor playing in one of the bands that backed up Bob Dylan in the movie. And he,
Okay.
he was an actor, not a guitar player, because he had a bigger role. Like he had acting to do, not just playing guitar. So I rented him my 1967 Fender Telecaster, and then I showed him where to place his hand on the neck to make it look like he was playing the licks in the song. And I was given a cassette of the song that he was going to be playing, and but they recorded their own version of it with like local players and stuff. The cassette I was given, I didn't know this at the time. I mean, I found it at the time, but the cassette, it was a song called "The Usual" by John Hyatt.
Okay.
The version that I had I don't know who was playing drums, but uh, it had Eric Clapton playing guitar. It
Hmm.
had Keith Richards playing bass,
Wow.
and I can't remember. And Dylan was singing it, and I guess playing rhythm guitar. And I don't remember who the drummer was. But the point is that that song was never released. That was just a demo of that
Yeah.
song, the John Hyatt song, and Dylan was singing this John Hyatt song for this movie. I guess the point I'm trying to make is that you never know who heard what,
Yeah.
because that was never meant to be released. I only ever had a cassette of it. I heard it a bunch of times. I think I still have the cassette in the basement, but it never came out or anything like that. And yet, and I'm not even sure the John Hyatt song ever came out as a song, like let alone with those guys playing on it. But there's all kinds of music floating around out there, and you just never know who's heard it. And so
Well, I mean, back in the 80s, I guess it would have been hard for you guys to get some Canadian bands just probably never got heard outside of our country. But now with the internet,
yeah,
that's not necessarily true. Like anyone can go on YouTube and look up any band. I can send my friend in Texas a country band that plays here in Canada that she might not have heard of back in the day, but now she knows who they are because anyone can watch it now.
yeah, that's right. No, that is true, and that's both a good thing and a bad thing.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I mean, I like the idea that it's getting out there.
Yeah, and it's
Too.
a good thing. It's certainly a good thing for the fans, and it's a good thing for the bands to have their music heard. There's no
And,
question.
and all it takes is a Stranger Things to go, hey, that's a good song. Maybe I should use that.
That's true. Somebody, a music publisher I interviewed for my songwriting workshop, was asked by one of the students, that Stranger, because the Stranger Things had just happened at that point, and they said, that
Mhm.
Stranger Things with that Kate Bush song, that's so weird, like such a weird thing to have happen. How do you make something like that happen? And his answer was this. He said, well, you invent a time machine. You go back 40 years. You write and record an iconic song that has some exposure, and then you fast forward yourself 40 years, and then you somehow get that song into the hands of the producers. He said, "That's
Yeah.
how you do it." He said, "That's the secret. I hate to be giving away secrets, but that's how you do it." And I mean, he had a point. It's just it's
um,
like it's more than a fluke, but it's also a fluke.
did you ever watch the show Nashville?
It's funny. I didn't. And meanwhile, my old friend Colin Linden was
Yeah, I
on
was
that
going to bring
show.
that up. Colin Linden
Yeah.
did a lot of the music on that, and I remember seeing him in quite a few episodes.
Yeah, and he did very well with that show. He bought a beautiful house in Nashville and built a beautiful studio in the backyard, and yeah, he did very well with that show. You'd think that given our connection, because we were friends for years and years, I just don't see him anymore. But you'd think that I would have made a point of watching that show, but I guess I was busy. I don't know. I hear it was great.
Yeah,
So
some of the music was absolutely fantastic. There's
yeah.
actually been some, I think I've seen CDs and of some of the music compilations from the show. And I know some of the actors on the show, they are musicians as well.
Right, right. Well,
And
I curated a songwriter series called Bluebird North, and it was named after the Bluebird Cafe in Nashville.
right.
Excuse me. And uh, Sony Special Products, who made
Hmm.
the Nashville show, they actually asked us nicely if we would change the name of our event, which we had been running for 25 years at that point, if
Yeah.
we could change it because they were planning on touring, doing like a touring Bluebird show, and they didn't want
Okay.
any confusion. And it was based on the Nashville TV show. And so we changed the name to Songbird North and continued on for a few more years with the pandemic in the middle. But the point is, yeah, Sony at that time, that show was so hot. They did live shows, they did tours of the UK, and they played big arenas with all
Hmm.
those, with the collection of stars from the show and so
Yeah.
forth. So it was a real phenomenon.
No, I meant to before I wrap this up, I know I've talked to you before about Gordon Lightfoot.
Yeah.
I know you didn't know him, but I want to make mention of we lost some true legends in the past little while, like Tina Turner recently and
Yeah.
Gordon Lightfoot. And what did those artists mean to you?
Well, Tina Turner, I didn't know either of those artists, but Tina Turner, for me, was hugely inspirational actually as I got older because
Yeah,
she reinvented herself and had her life had a second act and then it had a third act, and that's amazing. And the second act was after the first act was, well, really she had four, she had nine lives.
yeah,
First she was with Ike and Ike and Tina Turner, and they had their own thing. And
yeah.
then she went solo, and it really, she was an oldies act by then.
Mhm.
And then she was reinvented. She was doing rooms like the Imperial Room at the Royal York Hotel in Toronto for a week at a time, and then from there, her manager like breathed new life into her career, and she became the iconic figure that she became. And then she had another act where she retired. That's
Yeah.
amazing. Where she thought, okay, I've made enough money, I've had enough exposure. Now I just want to live my life quietly. And she did that. And I admire that too. So I found a lot to admire in Tina Turner's life story. Overcoming adversity and and surviving a relationship, an abusive relationship, and not only surviving but thriving. So that's impressive to me. Gordon Lightfoot is somebody that as a young guy, I didn't have as much appreciation for him.
Mhm.
To me, he seemed excessively folky. I wanted to be a rocker. I wanted
Right.
to play loud guitar and stuff. And Gordon Lightfoot to me was, pussy willows, cattails, and
Yeah.
and it was fine, but it didn't seem cool somehow.
Yeah.
So as a young, like a callow, shallow young guy, I didn't have the appreciation of him until I was much older. And he also had his, his bouts with substance abuse and stuff like that, and that
Mhm.
I hear about, and I didn't have much respect for that at the time. But as I got older, and people would do tributes to him, there would be an annual tribute to him at Hughes Room in Toronto, and he would always come to it, and I was so impressed by that he'd be there, at his own tribute to sort of and sing along and join in and get up on stage. It's amazing. And then I started actually paying attention to the lyrics, and he was unbelievable. And as a lyrics guy myself, how I could have been so shallow as to overlook him, I don't know, but I did. And I mean, did she mention my name? You know that song?
I absolutely. Yeah.
That that song, just every single word is in place. Every single word is in exactly the right place, and it's a song that expressing an emotion in an understated way, in a way that you don't hear in rock music. Because rock music isn't about understatement.
No.
And I love understatement. And so here he's saying, "Did she mention my name just in passing?" And he's
Yeah.
as if he doesn't care. Did she mention my name? Just wondering. Did my name
Yeah.
come up?
Yeah.
And so he'll say, it's so nice to meet an old friend and pass the time of day and talk about the old town a million miles away.
Right.
Is the ice still on the river? Are the old folks still the same? And by the way, did she mention my name?
Yeah.
It's like he mentions all this other stuff, but really what he wants to know is
Is
is she thinking of me? Does she ever
yeah.
think of me? And that's the real point. And it's so like conversation that we have. I may want to
Yeah.
ask you something about, somebody that and or something going on in your life, but I don't want to be too direct about it. And usually you don't find those kinds of conversations in songs.
Yeah.
So to find that in this, among many brilliant songs by Gordon Lightfoot, it's just so great, so skillfully done, and so moving.
Right.
And it's funny, that song. I took notice of that song when I was a teenager, so it's not like I was completely blind to his abilities. And I do remember thinking at that when I was a teenager, I really like the fact that this song is not direct, is indirect,
Yeah.
and I've got a real appreciation for that now. But I guess I did back then too.
Well, a song I think you should check out if you like that kind of song. Um, as you know, I'm a pretty big Stompin' Tom fan. Being here on Prince Edward Island, it's hard not to be.
Yeah.
He did a song. It's not a big hit of his. It was on his Gumboot Cloggeroo album. It was called "Home on the Island."
Okay.
It's about what it's like when you've left PEI and go back home to visit, like your parents. And it's about how, just arriving home on the island is the opening lyric.
Right.
The people on the ferry were smiling, and dad's on the telephone dialing, telling everybody I'm home.
Right. Oh, wow.
And then the
Yeah.
song goes into how when you get, because it reminded me of when we used to come back to PEI with my dad to my grandparents' house.
Yeah.
It's the kind of things you talk about, what's going on in the neighborhood.
Right.
You
Right.
got, you see the price of potatoes in the paper, how's the
Right.
old Alfie, the mailman who delivers the mail around here. It's one of those, that kind of reminds me of that kind of song.
Sure.
And it really gives you the feeling of what it's like for someone who moved away from PEI to come back home to visit.
Right. Yeah.
If
Aren't
you ever
songs
get a
like,
chance to listen to it, I think you'd really like it.
I'll look it up actually after this call. Isn't it amazing what songs can do?
It is. It is.
Yeah.
It gives you the feeling, and if it's one of those things that I don't think you'd really know unless you did leave PEI and come back home for a visit, but it really does give you that feeling.
I do think though that it doesn't matter. Like I've only ever visited PEI, but I bet I would relate to that song. I've never moved away from home, but I bet I would relate to that song because I'd be thinking of my own dad and how he left
Yeah.
Toronto first, and then he went to Montreal, and then he left Montreal to go to Ottawa, and that kind of thing. And I'd be thinking about other people I know. Paul Myers, my dear friend Paul Myers, who moved from Toronto to San Francisco, and what it's like when he comes home. So I think that's the great thing about songs is even if they have specific details in them, it's not like we as listeners go, well, I've never lived in PEI. I can't relate to this song. You know, we find our brains find ways to relate.
But that's what the songwriter maybe is trying to do, is trying to show you this is what it's like. Like this is
Yeah, yeah.
how it is. And that's what songwriting is supposed to be.
Well, I think so. I think a lot of young songwriters, though, are afraid of putting in actual detail because they feel like that will make the song less universal. The irony is it makes it more universal. If I sing about my cat Fluffy and
Yeah.
I sing about Fluffy's pointy ears
Yeah.
and so forth, that isn't you're not going to listen to the song and go, well, I don't have a cat named Fluffy. I don't even know what he's talking about. You know, it's like you'll relate it to other cats that you may have loved, you
Yeah.
know.
Right.
So being more specific actually in a song, ironically, generally makes the song more universal.
I agree.
It's really odd when you think about it.
Yeah. Speaking of odds, your friend the odds are back together.
Yes, they are. Well, they never really broke up, but they get busy with other projects. But yeah, they got 2 new singles out. Yeah, and they're
Yeah.
great.
I
Yeah.
really hope you come down here sometime and maybe get
Oh,
into some
thanks, Al.
trouble
Yeah.
around here because there's some good bands coming around here this summer as well. Alfie's Apicos is coming
Oh,
back
no
here.
kidding. Wow.
The two guys from Kevin Kane and Brian Potvin are coming and doing a thing here at the end of August.
Oh, they're great. Kevin used to play in my band.
Oh, did he? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, great.
Briefly, yeah, but yeah, Kevin's a really great guy. And so is Brian. I would
Um,
love to play there. If you know of any gig opportunities, you let me know. And you never know, I might get in an airplane and come down. But I only know a couple of PEI musicians. I know a guy named Nick Doneff,
okay.
who you should check out. He's a terrific songwriter. If you like John Prine-esque sort of songs, very
Hmm.
laid back, he's fantastic. And I know somebody named June Morrow, who's more of an aspiring songwriter, and that I don't know if she gigs, but you know, I know talented people in PEI, but I don't know many of them.
I think you
So
might like Dennis Ellsworth.
yeah, people have said that. Yeah,
He also does they do a Tragically Hip tribute band called Fabulously Rich.
right. And yeah, you've mentioned them. You love them.
They're fabulous. They really do justice to what the hip was all about.
That's great. Yeah.
And it's great to see that because they sell out every time they play a show here or anywhere in the Maritimes for that matter. They've gotten quite well known. But Dennis has a great career. He's very influenced by the Skydiggers.
Right. Oh, nice.
And
Well,
they were just here last week, actually.
oh, really? Oh,
Yeah, the
nice.
Skydiggers were here last week.
Oh,
So
those guys. Yeah.
yeah, the Trailside's the venue that gets some really good shows. I could see you playing there and doing
Yeah.
very well.
Well, I actually will look into it because I want to play more. If I'm going to retire, quote unquote, I'm going to retire into working harder.
Not really retiring at all, kind of.
No, not at all. But at least I won't be chasing money in the way that I would have had to in the past. It's funny being a freelancer all my life. I've actually been really careful with my money, and I'm not. I don't think I'm a cheapskate, and I like to live my life and do stuff and so forth. But I'm not extravagant at all, and so I've been able to save about. I generally put away about half of what I make. And so I've got some money in the bank. And what I've got to do now is sort of change my mindset, not right now, but over the next year, until I turn
Right,
65, into stopping worrying about saving and feeling free to spend some of that money,
right.
to live off it. And that's going to be the big adjustment for me for retirement.
You don't have to be rich to enjoy your life, though,
No, apparently not, because I've enjoyed mine and I'm not rich.
because it sounds to me like you enjoy what you're doing.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. You don't have to be rich. And I think we talked about this before. Just because, the jitters aren't active anymore, it doesn't mean people think you're not doing anything. But nothing
Yeah.
could be further from the truth. Like, I mean, I'm
Yeah.
sure Arnold Lanny from Frozen Ghost is still doing stuff. We just
Oh
don't
yeah,
hear about
yeah.
it.
It's funny. People who are maybe a little less thoughtful than they could be will sometimes come up to me and say, "What happened to you?" And it's like when you're the person that they're asking that about, like it seems so absurd because it's like, well, I'm right here. I've been here all along. Like, what are you
Yeah.
talking about?
We don't stop doing things just because you
Yeah.
don't hear us on the radio anymore.
Yeah,
Like,
and just because much music isn't playing us, because guess what? They're not playing anybody. They're, you know,
yeah,
so it doesn't mean that everyone it doesn't mean like Alfie Zappacosta or Larry Gowan cease to exist. You
Yeah.
know, we're all still out there doing what we love.
If you look around, you'll find them.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So,
Yeah,
well, yeah, book me a gig at the Trailside.
I will. I'll see
Okay,
what I can do.
okay.
I really enjoyed talking to you, Blair, and I really enjoyed getting to actually meet you face to face back in Ontario a few
Yeah, that was great, Alan. Yeah,
months
yeah,
ago.
likewise. Thanks for talking to you too.
And
Yes.
sorry about dragging David McMillan around.
No,
You
he
guys
was.
obviously know each other, so
Oh yeah, we know each other. Yeah, David. Yeah, he's a lovely guy. He's a
he
great guy.
really is. He's one of my favorite conversationists. Like, we
Yeah,
just go on for we could go on for hours, but we just don't
yeah,
have the time sometimes. But he's a great fellow and very knowledgeable about music as well.
oh, yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
Some good
So,
stories too.
but I appreciate you giving up the time to talk. Good luck with what you're coming up with, your writing and your show coming up in June.
Yeah, thanks. If anybody's in Toronto on June 15th, I'll be
Yeah,
at Newman's Pub on the Danforth and Broadview, and start at 8 o'clock. It's an early show, and I expect a full house. That's not a prediction; that's a warning. No, it's a plea. I'm expecting a full house,
yeah,
and
get out there and see it. He's a fabulous
that's it.
performer. He's a
Thank
great
you.
singer, and you'll love the violin.
Yeah, exactly. It's the violin. Yeah,
Yeah,
and if you're in St. John's, come see me tonight at the Black Sheep. That's June 4th, Sunday, June 4th. I'm at the Black Sheep on George Street in St. John's.
he doesn't get there often, so you may as well get out there and see him while he's there.
Exactly. Fly in.
Fly in if you have time. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. You
absolutely.
still make it. All right. Thanks, Alan.
All right,
Great
thanks a
talking to
lot for taking the time. Take care of yourself,
you. My
sir.
pleasure.
All
You
right,
too.
bye bye.
Bye.